I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. I only recently heard that there was a Deep Blue Sea 3, which prompted the immediate question, wait, they made a Deep Blue Sea 2? And I thought that catching up on these would be the perfect opportunity to revisit the original from 1999 Deep Blue Sea before I move on to what I am going to call Deep 2C and Deep Blue 3. I saw Deep Blue Sea in the theatres when it came out, and I can remember really enjoying it. Vividly recall pulling my feet off the floor a couple of times against imaginary, I don't know, floor sharks. What can I say? I was there for the roller coaster ride and it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Returning to it a little over 20 years later, does it still have the same fun factor? I will say this right at the start. For my money, Deep Blue Sea has the best sharks in any shark movie ever. The practical sharks. The CGI, even at the time, was a little bit ropey. It hasn't aged well. CG doesn't tend to age well. But those practical sharks, life size, fully remote controlled, no wires coming out of it or anything, able to swim on their own through the water, the jaws that could be operated, the mouth, the thrashing around in the water. Man, those sharks look good. They set the benchmark for how a practical shark should look in a shark movie. A benchmark that no one's even bothered trying to meet or exceed after that, because CG is just the way we do things now. So Deep Blue Sea on the shark movie front is already winning points. Big points, because the time and the effort they put into those sharks is almost above and beyond, seeing as how every other shark since then has just been computer generated. I rewatched Deep Blue Sea last night and I've got to say I still had a hell of a lot of fun with this movie. The trick, I think, for anyone sitting on the fence is to understand where the movie is coming from. It starts out at sea with a group of beautiful young people on a yacht dangling their feet into the water. It's nighttime and we all know what's going to happen. It actually feels a little more Friday the 13th opener than it does Jaws, but it's sort of nodding a little to the Jaws movies and the shark movies that we've had up until this point. And indeed the shark does attack and it looks great, and it looks great in the moonlight. I'll tell you what, sorry to keep harping on about these model sharks, but when you've got the fin and then the tail behind it moving backwards and forwards to propel the shark through the water exactly as it should be. It looks amazing and it sends chills, and everything looks like it's going to be exactly by the numbers you'd expect until from off screen, one harpoon, two, and then there's Thomas Jane looking moody and broody, stopping the shark before it can attack those gorgeous looking people. And then from that point on, it basically says to you, Deep Blue Sea is not the shark movie you got used to. We're doing our own thing. And if you buy into what they're doing and get on board, it's so much fun. The elevator pitch for this movie was Jaws indoors. And there you go, ka-ching, I'm sold. In fact, I think this would make a great double bill with Bait 3D. If you want a double bill of sharks in buildings, and why the hell wouldn't you? We joined the research team on Aquatica, an ocean-bound and below the ocean scientific research facility who are extracting brain cells from sharks to find a cure for Alzheimer's. Don't ask, it doesn't matter. I'd forgotten quite how 90s this movie was, from Saffron Burrows' power suits to Samuel L. Jackson's. Would it have been a billionaire back then? Probably he was just a multi-millionaire. Now he'd be a multi-billionaire with his helicopters. Got Thomas Jane showing off his arms in his vest tops. Shark Vision and Michael Rappaport as a wisecracking sidekick. You don't get more 90s than that. Add in Samuel L. Jackson's backstory of the disaster he had in the Alps with an avalanche that's just hinted at. We get little details of it, which to my mind feels exactly like the plot of a 90s action movie, something like Cliffhanger, also directed by Renny Harlin, that gives you the feeling that for that character, this is the second 90s action movie he's in. And then we get Aquatica itself. Such an awesome location. Again, very 90s, a little bit of a throwback to the 80s maybe, and stuff like Leviathan, Deep Star 6, certainly Alien, we'll touch on that in a bit. And the interloper, Samuel L. Jackson, the man funding it, doing his tour of the site, deciding whether or not to continue funding it or shutting it down, is given a tour of the facility. So as he tours the facility, we, the viewer, get to understand the layout so that we understand the real difficulties people get in when everything goes tits up and starts flooding. There's plenty of maps everywhere for people to point to and say, well, we can run down this corridor and we can go up this stairwell or this lift shaft. You're never at a loss with where you are. And the thing I realised while I was watching it is, if you go into it hoping for another, I would say, really high bar, high concept 90s action movie, then you'll have a great time with it. Much more so than if you go in expecting a scary movie. There are scares, don't get me wrong, but expecting a scary movie or a horror type movie, this has much more in common with Speed, say, the high concept action, than it does with Jaws, frankly. Which is not to say that it's without its gore, because there's plenty of deaths. Unfortunately, a lot of them are CG deaths, but certainly gory enough CG deaths. The first real oh my god moment, though, when Stellan Skarsgård's arm comes off and then everything after that goes to shit. It's kind of like from that moment on, and then the tropical storm hits, and then there's a problem with the helicopter winch. Everything goes to hell. The handbrake comes off and the cart just starts slamming down the hill, and there is absolutely no way of stopping it. It made me wonder what the hell happened to Renny Harlin. He was really adept at these sort of mid to high budget, successful, profitable action movies. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Dream Master, visually, it looks great. The man's got a real eye for detail, a real eye for action sequences. He directed Die Hard 2, which I happen to really enjoy. Cliffhanger, like I mentioned previously. The Long Kiss Goodnight, also with Samuel L. Jackson. An excellent little action movie, a little forgotten gem there, very underappreciated. Was it Cutthroat Island that eventually cut his own throat in the business? I mean, Deep Blue Sea came after Cutthroat Island. After that, he moved on to things like Exorcist The Beginning, which at least it looks pretty, and the Dyatlov Pass incident, which I'm not a fan of found footage movies, and I really got on with that film. So someone with a really good eye for action through the found footage lens, and the Dyatlov Pass incident, which I hardly hear anyone talk about, is highly recommended from me. So Harlin's got a great eye for a frame, he's got a great eye for an action sequence, he gets the job done. His movies have always been sort of slick little entertainment vehicles. Why isn't he on the scene anymore? You can't make a shark film after 1975 without being compared to Jaws. And one of the very canny things that Deep Blue Sea does, and does pretty much from the start, is to say, we are absolutely not trying to be Jaws. We're just trying to be this fun little roller coaster ride. Come along and scream with us if you want to go faster. And it knows this. There are nods to Jaws. The license plate that comes out of the shark's mouth is the same license plate that was pulled from the tiger shark in Jaws. You know, the tiger shark?
A what?
And the sharks die in the same way that they die in the first three Jaws movies: explosion, electrocution, grenade. I guess we're lucky there were only 3 sharks in Deep Blue Sea, otherwise the 4th one would have had to have died by being hit with a boat and roaring and exploding? There are also clear bits of the Alien blueprint in Deep Blue Sea. Renny Harlin quite unashamedly, and why should he be ashamed, said he wanted Samuel L. Jackson to be his version of Dallas from Alien, the guy who seems to be all together and in charge and then snuffs it halfway through. And to that end, then the Saffron Burrows character, I guess, has to, well, she doesn't have to, but she does strip down to her skimpies like Sigourney Weaver did at the end of Alien, and I suppose somewhere towards the end of that movie she has her sacrificial moment echoing the end of Alien 3. Everyone pretty much does exactly what you would want them to do in this movie. There are no huge character arcs. There's no granular characterizations to wade through. You get Thomas Jane, who's the muscular, tight-lipped, chisel-jawed hero with a past. Samuel L. Jackson is the man with the money, the multi-millionaire, billionaire. A little bit of a change of pace for him, I think, character-wise, and he does everything he needs to. Michael Rappaport, that I mentioned earlier, being Michael Rappaport, what's not to like? LL Cool J, seemingly reprising his role from Halloween H20, but doing it with such bonhomie that you just love sort of seeing him do that again. Except here, I think his survival is earned. Both survivals seem tacked on, but earned here in Deep Blue Sea, where I think from H20, Halloween H20, his survival at the end robbed that movie of a lot of the impact it could have had. His death was genuinely shocking in that film. All the more shocking to me because it wasn't a death, because hey, I'm fine by the end of it. And with last minute tinkering, Saffron Burrows' character doesn't survive. She was supposed to have survived, but test audiences didn't like it, so Harlin stripped out any scene from earlier in the movie that helped us warm to her and kept her cold and clinical, scientific and focused. And in doing so, not only did she have to die by the decree of test audiences, but we get a female character we don't see much in movies. The female mad scientist. She is the Frankenstein of this movie. She's driven by her goal, and damn anyone who gets in her way. People are just tools to help her achieve her aim. It's not a female characterization you see much of. It is a little bit like Sigourney Weaver's portrayal of Ellen Ripley in Alien, the first movie. She's a professional in Alien. She gets her job done, she knows what the rules are, and she doesn't care if people don't like her. Unfortunately, yes. What doesn't help with those characterizations is both ladies do have to strip down to their pants in both movies, but we're making progress by degrees rather than leaps and bounds, I think, at this point. Look, what do I know? They both look great in their underwear. It just perhaps undermines the professionalism of both of those characters. So the sharks on the whole are great. You have to hold your nose and accept the shonky CGI. The set pieces are great. The kills I really enjoy. In fact, the one thing I really don't like about Deep Blue Sea is that this still from the back of the DVD case, which is all over every sort of promotion or article you can find about Deep Blue Sea, isn't in the movie, and it's a great shot. I wanted that shot. I don't think Deep Blue Sea 2, Deep 2C, is going to be any good, otherwise I will probably have heard about it by now, and the same goes for Deep Blue Sea 3, Deep Blue 3. But given that I think Jaws is the greatest movie of all time, and given that we accept that after Jaws there's a huge drop-off in quality as far as all shark movies go, Deep Blue Sea nicely stands on its own. It's marked out a little bit of territory that says that this is for me, this is the little bit of fun we're having over here that doesn't impact on Jaws whatsoever. And given all of that, I still find that I'm a glutton for, necessarily a glutton for really bad shark movies, because most of the shark movies out there are really bad shark movies, but I'm going to check out the rest of this franchise, as it is now apparently, and see what's going on with that.